This meeting of the full Appropriations Committee is called to order. Today, the committee will consider the following fiscal year 2026 bills: Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies, better known as CJS, Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and Related Agencies, and the Legislative Branch Appropriations. Following my opening remarks and those of Vice Chair Murray's, we will vote on reporting the three bills. After those votes, each subcommittee will discuss its work with presentations from the chairs and the vice chairs, and we will consider any amendments to each bill. I mentioned that procedure for our newer members because it is opposite the way most committees proceed. Let me begin my remarks this morning by thanking Vice Chair Murray for her leadership and all the members of the committee staff, and our subcommittee leaders, Senators Moran and Van Hollen of the CJS subcommittee, Senators Hoeven and Shaheen of the Agriculture subcommittee, and Senators Mullen and Heinrich of the Legislative Branch subcommittee. Each of them has worked very hard, along with their staffs, to prepare fiscally responsible, bipartisan bills that meet pressing national needs. When Vice Chair Murray and I took the helm of this committee during the last Congress, we committed to working together to get this committee back to the business of writing bills, having open sessions, holding many hearings, and advancing them through regular order so that senators have a voice in their development. I very much appreciate her continued commitment to an appropriations process that works. Our members have been busy for months analyzing the president's budget request, holding dozens of hearings, reviewing the input of other senators, and drafting the legislation before us today. 92 senators contributed to the three bills we will consider today, submitting more than 6,500 requests. Let me repeat that one more time. 92 senators submitted 6,500 requests, each of which was carefully reviewed by the subcommittees. These member-driven bills are a product of that intensive effort. They fund important priorities, including agricultural research, food and medical product safety, law enforcement priorities related to counterterrorism and fentanyl, and legislative branch offices that support Congress as we carry out our constitutional duties. There is no doubt that this is a challenging legislative environment. We are currently operating under a year-long continuing resolution. The delays in completing the fiscal year 2025 process and the fact that we are in the first year of a new administration contributed to a late budget request from OMB. So this has made it more difficult for the committee. But I would point out that this scenario is not unprecedented. In previous years, the Congress proceeded under the same pressures and chose to move ahead with bipartisan bills. I urge my colleagues to follow a similar path and to do so with a renewed commitment to advancing bills not only through committee, but also across the Senate floor. And both myself and others on this committee, including Senator McConnell, have been strong advocates for that approach. I briefly want to discuss the bills we will consider today, each of which is a product of collaboration and good faith negotiation, and highlight why expeditiously processing these bills must be a priority for the Senate. The fiscal year 2026 CJS bill supports our state and local law enforcement, including through the Burn Formula program that supports a range of activities from prosecution to crime prevention. The bill also funds research in critical scientific and technological fields. Moreover, it supports our oceans, fisheries, and weather programs that are enormously important. The fiscal year 2026 Agriculture and FDA Appropriations Bill supports our farmers and rural communities, the safety of our food supply, critical federal nutrition programs, and medical research and advancements. The bill provides the increases to support the administration's requests in the areas of food safety and rural housing. It supports much-needed investments in agricultural research and animal and plant health that were requested by nearly every member in this room. The fiscal year 2026 legislative branch bill provides funding for Congress and the offices and agencies that support our critical work. The bill also provides an increase for the Capitol Police to help them meet the expanding mission requirements to keep members, staff, and visitors to the Capitol complex safe. The number of threats against members of Congress has soared over the past few years. This bill reflects a bipartisan commitment to address security concerns. Again, I want to thank the Vice Chair and all the members of this committee, but particularly our ranking members and chairs for the bills before us today. We still have a long way to go, and we'll have to work together to construct additional bills that can receive bipartisan support. But today's markup is an essential and positive step forward. I now would like to recognize Vice Chair Murray for any comments that she would like to make.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Collins, and congratulations to you on your first markup. As chair, I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this committee. I also want to thank Senators Moran and Van Hollen, our CJS subcommittee leaders, Senators Hoeven and Shaheen, our Ag subcommittee leaders, and Senators Mullen and Heinrich for your work on the ledge branch and for all the work that went into these bills today. We have an important job here today to come together and work through our differences so we can fund the government, help our families, and make our country safer and stronger. Help people solve problems. It's the job that I've been here for a long time. And over the past few years, we have, together on this committee, as Chair Collins alluded to, established a strong track record on this committee of coming together despite serious disagreements to do just that with strong bipartisan bills. Now the challenges we face and the threats to this very process are greater than ever before, with the President and administration intent on ignoring the laws that we write and seizing more power for themselves. And of course, for the first time ever, we are operating now on a partisan full-year continuing resolution for all 12 of our funding bills, which turned over more say on how our constituents' taxpayer dollars get spent to unelected bureaucrats than any of us should be comfortable with. In the face of these immense challenges and threats, I believe it's more important than ever that we ensure our constituents' voices are heard by passing these bipartisan full-year spending bills. We cannot afford another disastrous slush fund CR that lets political appointees and bureaucrats who've never been to any of our states call the shots. So I'm glad we're here today taking an important step to do the hard work of finding common ground and advancing 3 funding bills that provide crucial investments to our country. The These are not the bills I would have written on my own. I'd like to do a lot more to help our struggling families and rural communities and develop cutting-edge technologies and science here in America, and I will obviously keep pushing to do as much as I can at every opportunity. But I also want to say that it is important that we do understand that we work together on this committee, do compromise, and pass our bills together. I also want to say at the top that I share Ranking Member Van Hollen's outrage that this administration has, on a dime, attempted to reprogram funding secured for the FBI headquarters after this committee provided funds and a competitive selection process was run. It is emphatically not how things should work. But yet again, we are seeing this president thumb his nose at Congress and do what he wants. This is really something that we should have been able to address in this bill, along with a lot else, and I'm really disappointed that we could not. So while I will be voting yes to advance this bill and keep the conversation going and support this bipartisan process, it is an issue that I will continue to press on with Ranking Member Van Hollen. And I would just say I would caution this committee, if my Republican colleagues simply stand by and watch this, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to envision a future Democratic president who decides we don't need to quite fund a FBI agency or building in another state and change the funding around. So I hope none of us want to help set that precedent for future presidents or generations. But at the end of the day, I do believe these bills are all a good compromise starting point, delivering critical resources to continue key programs and make targeted new investments, rejecting some of the truly harmful proposed cuts by the president and steering clear of the extreme partisan policies he's requested and that we've seen in some of the House bills over the last few years. At the end of the day, there is no question in my mind these compromise bills offer a far better outcome for families back home than the alternatives of either the House or another disastrous CR. The three bills before us reject efforts to slash meals for hundreds of thousands of seniors, funding to keep people safe, investments in cutting-edge scientific research, and a lot more. And more than that, these bills make essential investments to keep our country strong, from funding that keeps our families fed, food supplies secure, and farms flourishing, to funding that drives cutting-edge scientific research that is happening in our states or fuels growing industries and small businesses. There's also funding for our communities to keep our families safe. There's funding to help each of us serve the folks who sent us here, investments in staff who help with constituent services, experts who provide crucial insights into legislation, capital operations and security that protects everyone who works here. Say that again. I have to do a mechanical thing here?
Here, use mine.
Sorry, not in my training. Okay. And there's funding to help each of us serve the folks who sent us here, investments in staff who help with constituent services, experts who provide crucial insights into legislation, capital operations and security that protect everyone who works here and comes to visit, and important investments in member security as well. In light of the tragic assassination and attack on lawmakers in Minnesota recently, it is painfully clear we must do more to address the threat of political violence that really tears at the heart of this democracy. So I'm pleased to see some progress and new investments there. It is clear we've got to do more. I will make sure we continue that conversation. Bottom line, what we are doing here today is how the process should work. Members coming together, writing bills with bipartisan input, and I hope we can continue this process with all of our bills. The challenges that we face are really immense, and it is so important that we do the job that we were sent here to do. But for us to be able to work in a bipartisan way effectively, that requires us to work with each other, to not just write bipartisan funding bills, but to defend them from partisan cuts sought by the President and the OMB Director. We need to make sure decisions about what to fund and, yes, what to rescind are made here in Congress on a bipartisan basis and within our annual funding process. We cannot allow bipartisan funding bills with partisan rescission packages. It will not work. And that is why I will repeat my commitment to all of my colleagues on to my colleagues and I on this side of the dais, we stand ready to discuss rescissions as part of these bipartisan spending bills, as part of these bills. And just as this committee has always done, working together to across the aisle to look where it makes sense to cut or rescind or reform. I believe that is the path to our collective success. And I hope my colleagues work with us on this offer and reject the rescissions package next week. So as we mark up this legislation today, I hope we all keep our eye on what comes next. We have 9 more bills to get across the finish line, and these are decisions that will help us get there. And there are decisions that will make that task a lot harder, if not impossible. I spoke about this last week at the hearing with Director Vogt. This markup, these bills, they show the potential of this committee when it works best. We have a powerful role here where we can do a lot of good for the communities we represent. But I will warn everyone again, this committee is not powerful just because. It is powerful because we are able to work together to secure investments that actually become law. But if we choose to ignore that, this committee can and will lose its power. If we start passing partisan cuts to bipartisan deals, how are we ever supposed to work together? That is not hypothetical. That is a real question that will be posed by any party line rescission package. There are 2 roads before us right now. There's the road we peered down at the last hearing, the road where this becomes the rescissions committee, looking at package after package of cuts, fighting over how much of the last deal that we will unravel, fighting over whose projects get canceled, whose community gets robbed. And there is the road that we are taking a step down today, the bipartisan road where we actually work together, where we stand together and get investments back home to the people who sent us here. I know where I want us to go, and so as we vote on these compromise bills today, I hope all of my colleagues will not just join me in advancing these bills, but also join me in reflecting on how we got here and how we can best move forward. We cannot take for granted the spirit of trust that makes it possible for us to write bills together. It's easy to damage, pretty hard to repair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murray. I now will recognize the Vice Chair to make the customary motions for the CJS, Ag, and Legislative Branch bills.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that the committee report favorably an original bill making appropriations for commerce, justice, science, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, an original bill making appropriations for agriculture, rural development, food and drug administration, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, and an original bill making appropriations for the legislative branch for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, provided that each bill be subject to amendment and that any amendment increasing budget authority be offset by reduction of equal or greater budget authority, provided further that the chair of the committee or the chair of the subcommittee reporting the original bill be authorized to offer the substance of the original bill as a committee amendment in the nature of a substitute to the House companion measure, and provided further the staff be authorized to make technical and conforming changes to all fiscal year 2026 bills and report as necessary.
Without objection, I know.
Madam
I'm sorry.
Chair, is just parliamentary inquiry.
Yes,
I'd like to know
the
the appropriate
gentleman
time
will
to speak
stay.
on the bill.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There will be time to speak and offer amendments and debate them and vote on them.
But I'm saying just before we actually vote on the bill, I just have a comment to make. Is this the
Okay.
appropriate time?
The better time would be after, but if the gentleman wants
I
to
appreciate
proceed
that,
now.
Madam Chair. Well, I do because of sort of the backwards way we do this in the committee.
Okay.
I want to explain my vote, and I do want to start on a positive note. I want to thank you, Madam Chair and Vice Chair Murray, for the tone that you've taken in these proceedings. I also want to thank my partner, the chair of the CGS committee, Senator Moran, and his team. for all their work on the CGS bill. I think if you look at the bill in its totality, it provides in a bipartisan way for critical priorities that we all agree are necessary for the country. And I'll have more to say about the positive aspects of the bill a little later. But it does have a big glaring hole in it, Madam Chair and colleagues, which is that it fails to protect longstanding bipartisan congressional decisions. Today, it's the FBI headquarters. Tomorrow, it could be any project anywhere in the country. And I do just want to take a moment to reflect on the long journey that we took with respect to the FBI headquarters. Many members here have been part of that process because for years, the CJS committee and the FISG subcommittee have set aside funds as a down payment for a future FBI headquarters. $555 million has been accumulated in the FBI capital fund in this bill. $843 million has been accumulated in the FISG bill for GSA. And that was a down payment that was then intended to go toward whatever site was selected as part of a multi-year process. Because years ago, it was decided not just that the current FBI headquarters is inadequate, but for security reasons and to meet the mission requirements of the FBI, they needed a new site. And as part of that security component, they decided it was important to move the FBI to a campus-like setting, like we have for the CIA, like we have for the NSA. And a long process was entered into. There were 2 sites in Maryland that were looked at. There was 1 site in Virginia. We all appeared before joint committees of the FBI and GSA, and ultimately a decision was made that it would be in the best interests of the FBI to move to the Greenbelt, Maryland site. Well, as Senator Murray indicated, a few weeks ago, the administration just announced that it wanted to snatch the $555 million that had been set aside for a down payment on that selected site and use it instead to move the FBI into the Ronald Reagan building. No analysis done with respect to security requirements, no analysis done with respect to FBI mission requirements, no review of the underlying statute as to the purpose of the Ronald Reagan building, no analysis of what they would do with current tenants in that building.
Excuse me, Senator Van Hollen.
Yeah.
As the vice chair of the subcommittee, you are going to get to
No, I understand that, Madam Chair. I
bill.
just want to explain my vote to my colleagues, and I will be quick. I'm getting near the end. I think this is a question. You know, Senator Murray talked about ending rescissions, ending impoundments. This is a rescission by another name. So I actually think this is a test for the subcommittee as to whether or not we're going to stand up to whatever executive branch it may be to support bipartisan congressional decisions that were made through the same process that we're going through right now over a multi-year period. And I would suggest that we deal with that. You're right, Madam Chair, I will offer an amendment on this later, and I hope people will support the amendment. But because of our process of voting first, I'm going to vote no. If my amendment passes later, I will change my vote to yes. But I do want to end with this. I do think this is about much more than the FBI building. I think this is a fundamental question about whether this committee is going to surrender its prerogatives and powers to the executive branch, whoever may be president at the time. And that's why I will vote no.
Thank you. Let me explain to all committee members that each chair and vice chair of the subcommittee will present their bills. Will have an opportunity, any member, to offer amendments. We will vote on that. And if someone, as a result of the outcome of those amendments, wants to change their vote, they are allowed to do so. So this is the traditional way that appropriations has always proceeded. And the problem is that if we start the debate before we do the traditional way, we will never get to the votes until we start getting called to vote on the floor. Senator Kennedy.
Why do we do it backwards?
Well,
Amen to that.
that is a legitimate question that I asked when I first joined this committee many years ago. It has been the process of the committee, and I would ask that we stick with it today, but I will have a conversation with any members who wish on whether we should change the process. Frankly, it has worked very well in the past to proceed to the votes, then do, well, everybody is here, and then proceed to consider each bill in turn. And occasionally, someone does switch a vote. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally they do.
Well, my point is that I think it's something we ought to talk about, because if we vote first and then Senator Van Hollen gets his amendment adopted, I'm not saying he will or won't, then he has to change his vote, and when you change your vote, you're going to look like a big weenie.
Yeah.
And it would make better sense, it would seem to me, to just take it like we do a normal bill, but that's just one
Yeah.
person's opinion, which obviously the chairman doesn't agree with.
All I'm doing is following the process that has been in place forever. So and has served this committee well in terms of getting bills approved and without taking away anybody's rights. So with that, I would note that we do have a quorum present. I'm sorry, Senator Britt.
Yes, I just want to, look, I really appreciate this process. I appreciate all of the hard work that's put in. Just respectfully, I would say, and while by different means, the moving of headquarters from one state to the other, from one administration to the other, that precedent has been set, and it was set by the Biden administration. This is very different, and I understand that with regards to moving from Maryland to D.C., but literally, Alabama competed and won fair and square under President Trump's administration. And then under President Biden, even though his Secretary of the Air Force said Space Command should be in Alabama, he chose to move it to Colorado, from a red state to a blue state. We could talk about this for days, but I think it's disingenuous to say that these things haven't happened.
So we now are going to proceed to the vote to report the Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Bill, subject to amendments. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham. Senator Moran.
Aye.
Senator Hoeven.
Aye.
Senator Bozeman.
Aye.
Senator Capito. Aye. Senator Kennedy.
Aye.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Aye.
Senator Hagerty.
Aye.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
No.
Senator Reed.
No.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley.
No.
Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin.
No.
Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen.
No.
Senator Heinrich.
Aye.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 21 ayes, 6 nays. The motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. We will now vote to report the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and related agencies bill, subject to amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham. Senator Moran.
Aye.
Senator Hoven. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith.
Aye.
Senator Hagerty.
Aye.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin. Senator Reed. Senator Shaheen. Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 27 ayes, 0 nays, and the motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. We will now vote to report the legislative branch bills subject to amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham. Senator Moran. Senator Hoven. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
Aye.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin. Senator Reed. Senator Shaheen. Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 26 ayes, 1 nay, and the motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. Thank you all. We will now turn to consideration of the CJS Appropriations Bill. Again, let me thank the subcommittee for working together and producing a strong bipartisan bill. I also want to thank the CJS staff for working to get the bill ready for this first markup. This bill includes many important priorities for the American people, including funding for the Department of Justice, the Department of Commerce, NASA, and the National Science Foundation. I would now recognize Chair Murray, Vice Chair Murray, if she would like to comment on the bill.
Well, I just want to thank Chair Moran and Ranking Member Van Hollen for your work on this crucial bill. These are investments that protect our communities and that protect our leadership in science and innovation, from funding for NOAA's weather forecasting abilities, new investments in grants to prevent violence against women, and resources to keep communities across America safe, to rejecting efforts to slash funding for NSF, collapse and weaken the ATF, or cut funding for oversight at DOJ. These are really important investments, and I urge my colleagues to consider these. I will again say that I will support Senator Van Hollen on his amendment when he brings it forward.
Senator Moran, please present the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Collins, and thanks Vice Chairman Murray. As you indicated, thanks to the staff of Senator Van Hollen on this subcommittee and the majority staff, Brian and Kevin, for their tremendous effort in getting a bill completed in short order, short time. And I appreciate the cooperation that I've had with Senator Van Hollen in getting this bill to the position that it's in, only to him to discover that there was a challenge that he was unaware of, but he continued to be helpful as we put this bill together that makes a lot of sense. As Senator Collins said, Chairman Collins said, this is about the Department of Commerce, the Department of Justice, and then our science portfolio is NASA and the National Science Foundation. I would sum up what we've done here by saying that this bill is a blueprint on how to govern in a constrained fiscal environment by making smart strategic choices, cutting where we can, investing where we must, and always staying focused on trying to deliver value to the American people. Our allocation, we certainly met our allocation where really the decision about how much money we had to spend was determined. And I appreciate the Vice Chairman and the Chairman in providing the allocation for us to work with. The real increase in spending power in this CJS-funded agencies is only $279 million increase, or 0.37%. That's above the FY25 level. I indicated to those who ask on this committee or the press, constituents at home, that what did I envision? And that was that I envisioned that we would have a normal appropriation process and try to create a normal bill under the circumstances of the President's budget request and under the circumstances of the allocations that we have. And I would describe this bill, I don't know what normal is around here, but if something's normal, this is close to being normal as what this committee would do, and what this subcommittee has done in the past. Approximately half of that increase that I mentioned is dedicated to the census. The decennial census comes into our bill, comes for appropriations, and so we begin funding the census preparation for the next decennial census, and that began in this piece of legislation. So half of the increase was consumed by something that I don't know that many of us have a lot at stake in, I guess apportionment of the congressional houses, making sure our constituents are enumerated, and yet it is the constitutional responsibility that we're responding to. To balance this FY26 Senate mark, it makes cuts to a large number of Department of Commerce bureaus and DOJ components. However, we targeted these cuts as much as possible to the personal heavy accounts that do not require funding for positions that have already been vacated in FY25. Having said that the cuts came from the Department of Commerce and the Department of Justice components, federal law enforcement under the Department of Justice, the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, and the Bureau of Prisons, and the Office of the United States Attorneys are all held flat. That mark rejects major cuts that have been proposed to those law enforcement agencies. And in the addition that our bill provides, and it's an issue that I've promoted in the past, this mark increases $20 million above the FY enacted level for the U.S. Marshals Service strictly for its judicial and courthouse security programs, and $10 million in new funding for the Daniel Edel Act grant program, which removes federal judges' personal information from public sources. It was mentioned about the safety of members of legislative branches. I tried to prioritize the safety of the judicial branch as we work our way through this legislation. Science funding, this mark is makes a minimal cut of $60 million to the National Science Foundation. That's a 0.67% decrease. And the NASA account, I want to spend a moment on NASA. For NASA, the bill reflects an ambitious approach to space exploration, prioritizing the agency's flagship program, Artemis, and rejecting premature terminations of systems like SLS and Orion
before commercial replacements are ready. We make critical investments to accelerate our plans to land Americans on the lunar surface before the Chinese, but also in the technologies and capacity to land astronauts on Mars. This bill protects key science missions that are fundamental to furthering our understanding of the Earth and better stewards of our natural resources, and supports critical programs not only to drive discovery, but to safeguard the Earth from natural disasters. And then, particularly with the events of the past, for many of us, NOAA, and particularly the National Weather Service, is a hugely important component of what this bill funds, and this bill recognizes that importance. NOAA is funded in a way that eliminates the ability, I shouldn't say the ability, eliminates the reduction in workforce at our National Weather Service, an issue that I've paid attention to, legislation that I've introduced that makes certain that those employees are considered incapable of being furloughed or removed, but also led an effort to get the National Weather Service to eliminate the pause, the administration to eliminate the pause on hiring. So this this appropriation bill fully funds the National Weather Service for purposes of employing the people who work at the National Weather Service to protect our well-being. And then just generally, and I think maybe other committee reports that we hear today will incorporate these kind of changes. But we are incorporating by reference our report tables, specifying the levels of funding at NOAA, NASA, and NSF to bring them into the text of the legislation, the appropriations bill. And we are addressing the amount of money that can be transferred by an agency, and perhaps something of importance or value to the members of the committee, a requirement that the Secretary of Commerce renews cooperative agreements with individual states as manufacturing extension partnerships as they come up for renewal. And then perhaps last here for my comments, I've discovered that in my time as an elected official in the Senate, it's a new development I have in conclusion more than once in my closing remarks. But in near conclusion, the DOJ's Office of Violence Against Women, the Office of Justice Programs, and the COPS Office now must post, under this legislation, if adopted, post their notices of funding opportunities within 90 days of enactment of this bill, and must make the award decisions before the end of the fiscal year. We've had significant delays in grant-making process so far in FY25. The intention of this provision is to get the agencies to post and then award the grants in a timely fashion. I share the comments of both the chairwoman and vice chairwoman. What I have set out to attempt to do, and working with Senator Van Hollen, is to avoid a continuing resolution and to make certain that we fulfill our responsibilities under Article 1. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you very much, Senator Moran, for an excellent presentation and a terrific job. I'm now pleased to call on the Vice Chair of the subcommittee, Senator Van Hollen, for any additional remarks that he might want to make on the CJS bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. And yes, as I said at the outset, I wanted to, first of all, thank Senator Moran and his team for working in a cooperative spirit on so much of this bill, what's in the bill. And thank his staff, Brian Danner, Kevin Wheeler, Rachel Taylor, Brian Gutrow, and my team, Jess Berry, Mike Benarchik, Blaise Sheridan, and Lindsay Erickson. I think we all recognize how much time our staff puts into making today possible, so I want to thank all of them. As Chair Moran indicated, while the total funds available in the CJS account are just 0.5% above the CR levels, we were able to make smart and targeted investments to help keep our communities safe, keep our country safe, to advance U.S. leadership in science and innovation, and to support growth and prosperity of the American economy. We were able to protect agencies and programs like NASA Science and STEM, NOAA, NSF, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Centers, and state, local law enforcement assistance grants. The chairman, of course, covered many aspects of this bill, so I'm not going to repeat those, what he discussed. I do just want to make a couple comments that I don't think were covered, or want to cover them a little more. In the Department of Commerce budget, we maintain the current next generation satellites that track severe weather, promote and support American businesses and exports, spur economic development nationwide, create cybersecurity and AI standards, promote economic development nationwide, and enable sustainable management of ocean resources, conduct periodic censuses, as the chair said, and much more. To promote American innovation and scientific discovery, the bill provides $9 billion for the National Science Foundation, sparing it from the proposed 57% cut advanced in the president's budget request. The bill funds NASA at $24.9 billion, slightly above fiscal year 2025, to explore the solar system, to advance our understanding of climate change, promote innovation and sustainability in aeronautics, and protect our planet. We rejected cuts that would have devastated NASA's science by 47% and would have terminated 55 operating and planned missions. And instead, we provide $7.3 billion. And as Chairman Moran said, and I won't go into the specifics again, we help keep Americans safe from violence in their communities and invest in life-saving grant programs for state, local, and tribal law enforcement, criminal justice initiatives, victims support, and other critical elements. So, colleagues, as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of good news in this report. I will be offering, as I indicated earlier, an amendment with respect to the one big gap regarding the precedent being set by not protecting the FBI funds that the committee has previously supported. But again, I want to thank the chairman and his team, and I will yield back my time.
Thank you. I will now turn back to Senator Moran for the presentation of the manager's package.
Chairwoman, thank you. I'd like to offer a manager's package containing amendments for the Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Appropriation Bill. This package has been negotiated and agreed to by both sides, and I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Is there an objection? Without objection, the manager's package is agreed to. Are there other members who wish to speak on the bill or offer an amendment to it?
Madam Chair.
Senator Van Hollen.
I have an amendment that's being circulated. This amendment is very clear. It says that funds made available by this bill and other bills shall not be used to construct an FBI headquarters at any site other than the one that was selected through a long competitive process because it met the security requirements and mission requirements of the FBI. I would just point out in response to Senator Britt, there's a big difference between this situation and the one you raised, which is in this situation, we have on a bipartisan basis put aside these monies for the purpose of making a down payment on the selected site. I am informed that that was not done with respect to Space Force, and that's the entire basis of my argument. My argument is not that presidents don't have these decisions that they can make. My argument is that we, on a bipartisan basis, as members of Congress, have for years proceeded with the understanding that we would put aside these funds, which are now a sizable down payment, not enough to cover the costs, full cost, but we would put aside these funds and await the outcome of the process that was established, which this committee was part of for a very long time. There have been GAO reports and all sorts of other input that resulted in the site that was picked. And I would just close again by making the point that if we allow the executive, whoever the president may be, to snatch monies that this committee and this Congress have set aside for purposes that we mandated, we are opening the door to taking a lot more money. In fact, there is funds, I've discussed this with the chairman, there are funds in the CGS bill for capital projects that the chairman strongly supports. I support. The administration doesn't support that project. In fact, they called for rescinding funds that this committee had previously advanced for a particular DOJ project. We rejected the Trump administration's request to rescind the funds for that particular project. And what we're asking here is that the committee, on a bipartisan basis, not allow the administration to rescind effectively funds that we have on a bipartisan basis provided. I would just, again, cautious everybody about the precedent that will be set if we don't stand up for congressional prerogatives in this case. FBI building today, projects in any other state tomorrow. Article 3 gives us these, Article 1 gives us these powers, and I hate to see us surrender them. And this is an effort to protect congressional powers and allow us to make decisions important to our constituents.
Thank you. Senator Moran, Senator Coons, Senator Mullen, and Senator Murray, and Senator Merkley have all indicated that they wish to speak on this amendment. Senator Murray, would you like to go first, or?
I will just add to my comments from my opening statement that I strongly support Senator Van Hollen's amendment. This is an issue he feels very strongly about, and for good reason. His amendment would ensure the Trump administration adhered to both the exhaustive site selection process and the bipartisan funding laws that all of us agreed to in this committee. I strongly urge its adoption.
Senator Moran.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This is an issue that we have had on the Senate floor and perhaps in this committee previously, although the funding that is being debated was passed nearly a decade, approved an appropriation bill and held for nearly a decade by Senator Mikulski, who was the ranking member of the full committee. And there has been debate about a new FBI headquarters. I think there's been consensus that the current headquarters is insufficient and worn. And there's been debate by members of the Senate about whether Maryland is the right option, whether Virginia is the right option. We've never, or maybe I should say Alabama is the right option, which has significant FBI presence. This committee has never made a decision about location, and the Biden administration did, and then this administration apparently wants to keep the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. at the Reagan building. But when my colleague from Maryland says we made a decision, the decision about location has never been ours. Also, it's not really the jurisdiction of the Commerce, Justice, Science Committee. While the money has been put in here for an FBI capital account, this is a GSA issue where other money has been set aside for the GSA to use for a new building, and that's the responsibility of FSGG, not this committee. I think there's an understanding of the issue that's before us. Madam Chairwoman, I thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to explain the circumstance.
Thank you. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I strongly support this amendment, and I just wanted to speak for a moment in support of it and urge my colleagues to consider it. I well remember when Senator Mikulski set aside this money, her urgency and attention to this detail. For many years, I was ranking on FSGG, including with Senator Bozeman, several senators, over 3 Congresses. There was a long and detailed and thorough decision-making process that produced the Greenbelt campus decision. And I think if you think about the CIA and NSA and the campuses they're located on and the very real security threats that the FBI headquarters may face and the value of taking the FBI from from, I think it's 5 different buildings to one campus facility. I just urge consideration for this amendment by Chris Van Hollen to make possible moving forward towards the solution that I think was on a policy basis the right solution for a Greenbelt campus. Thank you.
Senator Mullen.
To make the assumption that the FBI would possibly put their men and women in a less secured building is laughable. And for the fact that Congress would be able to know better to choose a site than the FBI, when that is their job, they're an intel agency. They know security, I promise you, better than all of us. This is what they fight. They fight threats, home, here, and abroad to some degree. For us to try to micromanage their site planning is ridiculous. They're not going to put their men and women at harm. We need to allow them to make a decision. We haven't been able to make a decision, nor do we make a decision. We allow and support their decision that they make, and all we're doing here is supporting that decision. But for us to debate that they would, for a security concern, is anybody in here professional in that area? Anybody on the Democrat side a professional in that area? Anybody here ever chose a site for security purposes? Ever looked at hard sites versus easy targets? I have. I know it well. And I would assume we need to lean in and trust these individuals because we're not talking about Republicans or Democrats. We're talking about the FBI. And I strongly oppose this. We're micromanaging the FBI. And by the way, at that point, any other agency from making decisions on their own. We have to trust the experts as we put them in place. In this circumstances, it's the FBI.
Senator Merkley.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and more broadly, thank you for the collaboration that you all are bringing as Chair and Vice Chair to this process. Before I speak specifically to this issue, there's a context in which this discussion is happening, and there is an ongoing kind of degradation of the importance of this committee that I think we need to wrestle with. My political mentor was Senator Hatfield, who was chair of this committee. His last discussion with me before he passed was about what's happening to the Appropriations Committee. And over time, what we've seen is we're making a lot more spending decisions through tax credits and deductions, so that's going to the Finance Committee. We have a lot more funding that's going into mandatory programs, so that's less discretionary funding. We're spending a lot more money on interest, so that is taken away from our role. And the mantra that existed back when I was first working here for Congress was appropriators are appropriators first and Democrats or Republicans second. That's how strong the bond was about our collective responsibility to produce budgets. We are also now threatened by the fact that we couldn't get the bills to the floor. I've shared with the chair and the vice chair a strategy for expediting getting bills to the floor so we can get individual appropriation bills considered. I'll proceed to share it with all of you. We are seeing that slow process is really hurting our ability to do bills. The fact that we went through a year with a continuing resolution undid all the work that everyone here worked so hard on last year, so that's another threat. And so I'm encouraging us to have a discussion as a committee about how we take and kind of breathe new life into our mission. Our mission of figuring out the best ways to spend the money allocated under the marks that are set by the chair and the vice chair, and how we collaborate. Rescissions are another new kind of threat. Bipartisan rescissions, not an issue. And that's why Vice Chair spoke to doing a rescission within a bill that we're doing a bipartisan discussion of and passing, that's one thing. But the rescission coming to the floor to, on a partisan basis, undo the bipartisan work of this committee, that's another kind of knife into the body of this body's work. And when my colleague from Maryland is saying that taking a decision that was made over a multi-year process, and to my colleague, Senator Mullen, that's when the experts came together. They wrestled with this, every aspect of the security for the FBI location. They vetted it, they brought in everyone, they wrestled with it. It was a lengthy, difficult consideration, and that's 2 years ago. So this does feel like a very arbitrary rescission. And I must say, I'm thinking about the decision that was a parallel in a way on the location of the research fleet for NOAA. And Washington State and Oregon State went through a multi-year process of competing for the location of that research fleet. And after all the experts were brought in and all the factors were considered, the decision was made to locate it in Oregon. And had an administration come along and said, we're going to ignore all of the experts that came together and wrestled with that and just make an arbitrary decision, I would have been pretty unraveled. And I would like to think that had the decision been for Washington State, that I would similarly have supported Washington State winning that competition. So I encourage us to view this as another piece of the fabric of us being appropriators, working together, protecting each other, helping each other, and to support this amendment. Thank you.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, this issue's been around for a while. Yeah, it's on. It's green. It's red. I got nothing? Got nothing. Is that better? Okay. So this issue has been around for a while. And in fairness, I was one that actually thought it had been resolved, that it was going out somewhere in Maryland. So I was a little bit surprised to see that this was now an issue in front of us. No secret, I don't like rescissions. I don't like the rescission package that we're going to be dealing with. I don't like the whole exercise of rescissions, particularly at a time when we're actually trying to advance appropriations. To me, it seems you've got a disconnect here. I'd like to think that we could take the recommendations from the administration that have come forward with this rescissions package and figure out how we're going to address them in appropriations going forward. That's another issue not for debate right here today, but it does play into how we're viewing our role as appropriators, how we view the role of rescinding funds as we're talking about with this particular amendment. I think this is kind of a big deal for us to be making a determination on at this hearing this morning. I've heard that the Appropriations Committee has not actually weighed in on the site necessarily. The chairman has said that. I very much respect my colleague from Oklahoma in saying the FBI, they look to the security aspects of facilities, and they're not going to put themselves in a place that would not be wise. But in fairness, I don't know what that review is. I don't think any of us know what that review is. My understanding is that this has been a decision that was made just very recently. So I, for one, would like to know that this analysis has actually been going on for more than just a couple months, that there's actually been that effort to ensure that we're going to move forward. This is the right place. And it's the right place not for a Trump administration, not for a Biden administration, not for a John Ossoff administration, but this is the right place for the FBI. So, sorry, I didn't mean to start any rumors. A Mike Rounds administration, how about that? That's better, yeah. So I don't know if this is, maybe this is something that we should take off. You should withdraw your amendment. Allow for us all, as members of the Senate, to get a more thorough briefing from the FBI, from the administration, as to the merits of this proposal. We're not going to be going to the floor with this appropriations bill as soon as we would like. We're going to have a little bit of time to do that. I just throw that out there because there's a lot that goes on with this particular amendment, and I would hope that we would be making the determination or the reason for the right reason, and not have this be viewed as a political exercise, that this is advantageous for the Trump administration, and then when you have an administration a few years down the road, that we not get caught in the crosshairs again. So I don't know whether the senator from Maryland is interested in that proposal, but it might be one way to address it at this moment.
Could I add to the interesting proposal that Senator Murkowski has just made? If Senator Moran thinks it's appropriate.
I didn't hear what you said, but you're the chairman, and so I think it's appropriate.
Well, let me suggest that we could ask for a briefing from the head of the FBI, which would be available to all members of this subcommittee in exchange for the senator withdrawing his amendment now, knowing that if this committee's still not satisfied or becomes satisfied, you would still have the opportunity to offer the amendment on the floor.
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to respectfully decline that proposal. I would suggest that in order to protect congressional intent, and I will speak to that in a minute, the best way forward would be for the committee to say that we will not allow funds to be spent on an alternative site. And then if we are persuaded, which is what we've decided in the past, if we're persuaded by the FBI that we could revisit that decision. I would just like to speak to some of the comments that have been made as the offer of the amendment. And I agree with Senator Mullen on one thing, which is we shouldn't be picking the site of an FBI headquarters. I know the senators knew that's not what we did. We set up a process, a long-term process where the FBI was at the table, along with GSA, which of course administers federal buildings, and we set up the criteria through the input of the FBI. So I would never pretend to be a person who would pick the site. We set up a process designed to make sure the FBI went to a place that met the security requirements. And so that is the difference here. We're not selecting something. We're upholding a decision that was made by the FBI and by the GSA based on all the inputs that they have to take into consideration. And now, to answer your question, Senator Murkowski, they have not done any analysis about the security requirements at the Ronald Reagan building. We got a briefing just the other day. They say it will take 7 to 8 months. So they've already said they're going to start transferring money and people, and they haven't even done the security requirement for the Ronald Reagan building. This Congress, many years ago, to Senator Moran's point, put in one of our appropriations bills that the monies in the bill would be reserved for one of the 3 sites that were the finalists that would meet the requirements. There were, again, 2 in Maryland, 1 in Virginia. What we said as a Congress on a bipartisan basis is that those funds would go to whoever won the competitive selection process of those 3 sites. We didn't decide. That process decided. And we did say that these funds will go for that purpose. As you said, Senator Mikulski began to put funds in this account, but the other account is the GSA account, which has more money that was set aside, as we said, on a bipartisan basis in that omnibus bill, to support the new headquarters at the site selected from that competition. We didn't pick. The experts picked. And now we have this proposal at the last minute coming in to say, let's go to the Ronald Reagan building when no security assessment has been done. So that is why I'm going to continue to ask members on a bipartisan basis to support this amendment.
Madam Chair, can I respond to that real quick? That's actually not completely accurate. This is not an unknown building. This is a known building. It's an underutilized building. We have all been there. There has been distinguished leaders around the world that have spoke at this building. Presidents have spoke at this building. This is a federal building that's been underutilized, and to say there hasn't been a risk assessment to this is absolutely not true. It is utilized all the time for, as I said, presidents and world leaders to speak at. It is 100% known building, and they understand the security and security risk around this building and what it is capable of doing and what it is not capable of doing. So that's disingenuous for you to say that.
Senator Mullen, will you?
Madam Chair?
No, I'm going to
Could
respond
I be
to that.
recognized?
Senator Hoven,
Could I be recognized?
yes.
I'd call a question.
Madam
About
Chair, I
to
want to
do.
respond to that because it's absolutely not true that anybody has determined that that building can meet this level 5 security requirement of the FBI, which was what this was decided. So, Senator Mullen, there are lots of buildings in Washington that foreign leaders visit. We don't decide to make them the headquarters for the FBI just because some foreign leader has been in there. I think we all understand that. So I would, again, we already know from their own testimony that they haven't made a determination on whether or not the Ronald Reagan building meets the security requirements, the level 5 security requirements for a new FBI campus.
We're now going to move to a vote. Senator Kennedy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Chris, how much money is set aside for the FBI?
The total is about $1.4 billion, $555 million in this account, the remainder in the GSA account under the FISG bill.
And what happens to the money?
Well, the administration is saying that that money that's been set aside for the selected site will now be used to move the headquarters to the Ronald Reagan building.
And what happens if there's money left over?
Well, there won't be, which is another story. This will require a lot of money, and so this issue, the whole purpose of setting up this process, the nonpartisan process, the experts to have a selection, this just opens the whole process up again.
All right, thank you.
We're now going to move to a vote on Senator Van Hollen's amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell. No. Senator Murkowski.
Pass for right now.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoven. No. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed. Aye. Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Aye. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Aye. Senator Murphy.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich.
Aye.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
On this vote, there are 15 ayes and 14 nays, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there further amendments to this bill? Yes, Senator Durbin.
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment which was filed with the committee last night. I don't have the exact number before me, but I hope that it's being passed out. The title of this amendment is Houston, We Have a Problem. 12 years ago, we had a space shuttle competition where it was going to be displayed so the American people could see this magnificent achievement. The competition ended with the decision that it would be placed at the National Air and Space Museum a new facility to be built in Chantilly, Virginia. For the last 12 years, this facility has entertained 25 million visitors who've come to see the space shuttle at no charge. It appears that one of the states that lost in that competition 12 years ago has come up with a new idea. Let's do it over again and make sure Texas wins. So in the reconciliation bill, Texas entered $85 million to move the space shuttle from the National Air and Space Museum in Chantilly, Virginia, to Texas. $85 million sounds like a lot of money. It is not nearly what's necessary for this to be accomplished. We asked NASA and the Smithsonian to sit down and figure out what it would actually cost to take this massive shuttle and move it. The total is $305 million. The appropriation and reconciliation was $85 million, far short of it. Houston has a problem. Where are they going to come up with the additional money to build a facility to actually display this shuttle? That facility, according to this estimate that was prepared for us, is $178 million that will be added on to the $85 million request. I raise this issue because I think we ought to think twice about this kind of approach. This will be the first time ever in the history of the Smithsonian that someone has taken one of their displays and forcibly taken possession of it. What are we doing here? They don't have the right in Texas to claim this. And secondly, $85 million isn't close to what it's going to cost if they're going to move it. We ought to have some honest accounting. Otherwise, I think we're dealing with something called waste, $85 million worth of waste. Now, I know that this is a controversial issue, and I know that there are other agencies, Smithsonian, NASA, and others that are interested in this issue. I'm going to withdraw this amendment, but I'm going to ask my colleagues, be honest about it. If we're going to use reconciliation to put a small amount of money on the table for the transfer, a forcible transfer, this is not a transfer, it's a heist by Texas because they lost the competition 12 years ago. I hope that we think about this long and hard before we approve any. I withdraw the amendment.
We've got 29 members on our committee, 15 of them voted aye.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, for your work on the FY26 CJS bill. I am offering an amendment related to funding levels to the FBI. I know everyone on this committee would agree that ensuring our FBI agents and professional staff have the best training in accordance with federal law, and that would be a priority. Over the past 2 years, the FBI received significant cuts to their salaries and expenses account. I am all for right-sizing the Bureau and ensuring that they can meet their investigative responsibilities. However, these continued cuts have had an impact on our capabilities. And in Alabama, where the FBI is producing the next generation cybersecurity and counterterrorism training tools. While I think we moved in a positive direction by ensuring that funding for salaries and expenses is at least at level with FY25, I'd like to continue working with my colleagues on the committee to address the capabilities lost due to the budget shortfalls in FY24 and 25. I'm hopeful we can work together to ensure that there is a balance between traditional workforce and our training components. Additionally, I'm disappointed to see that we have made further cuts to the FBI construction account. The FBI needs a total construction budget of around $60 million. My amendment would ensure that level of funding in the FBI construction account and, as a result, enable the FBI to continue the expansion of its important work across the country, particularly at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville. Being able to provide special agents with real-world training environments, thereby enhancing their offensive and defensive capabilities, is critical to ensuring our agents have the skills necessary to respond to threats if and when they occur. I appreciate the time to speak on this and the opportunity to continuing to work with this committee to address some of these shortfalls, knowing that I have a commitment from Chairman Moran to work with me on this important issue. I will withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Britt. Senator
distributing, and I appreciate the chair of the subcommittee for trying to get at the problem of National Weather Service staffing. We thought we had agreement in the managers, but it sort of got a little bit weaker, and I just want to read to you the distinction between what is in the managers in terms of National Weather Service staffing and what I'm asking for. The Moran Amendment, which was adopted, says, provided further that the National Weather Service shall maintain staffing levels by hiring, retaining, and rehiring after separations in order to fulfill the mission required under 15 U.S.C. 313 to protect life and property to the maximum extent possible. My judgment and the judgment of a lot of people who work at the National Weather Service is that to fulfill the statutory mandate gives a fair amount of room to assert that the current staffing levels and the current layoff process fulfills the statutory mandate. And the reason that we had tougher language was because we don't want to give this discretion to the Office of Management and Budget, which clearly has made the judgment that the National Weather Service has too many human beings working at the National Weather Service. And so my amendment simply says, notwithstanding any provision of law. By the way, we were pretty close to getting this into a manager's. I'm not sure what happened. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, funds provided by the National Weather Service by this act or any other act for any fiscal year shall be used to maintain no fewer than the number of full-time permanent federal employees employed on September 30th, 2024 for carrying out National Weather Service activities under this act using funds available under this act in this and any other appropriations act. So this locks in last year's National Weather Service head count, because if we have decided as a committee, and I'm looking at all of these other states where we're going into wildfire season and flood season and hurricane season and God knows what else, right? The town of Lahaina was burned down, eastern, I think, North Carolina was flooded. Lots of weird stuff is happening with greater and greater intensity. And we are not going to want to own ratifying layoffs in the National Weather Service and providing this discretion to an administration, which I know you support. I don't want to turn this into a polarized partisan question, but it's clear to me that this administration has already made the judgment that the National Weather Service has too many human beings. I don't think we think that. And so this amendment makes it clear that last year's staffing levels are the minimum.
Senator Moran.
Senator Schatz and I share the same desired outcome to make sure that the National Weather Service is fully staffed to meet its statutory responsibilities. It's what the manager's package amendment says. The amendment that he described as my amendment says that the amount of employees at the National Weather Service must be sufficient to meet the statutory requirements. I don't know that you want to specify that September the 30th of 2020, what'd you say, Brian?
24.
24 is the right number, but that's the distinction between what Senator Schatz is offering is that this bill already, as adopted, the manager's package says they must staff fully to meet the requirements of their statutory obligations. And I believe that's sufficient and a better way of expressing what needs to be accomplished.
One final comment. I love Jerry Moran. Let's just get that out of the way.
Are you supporting him for president?
We could do a lot worse. The question is whether we want to give discretion to the administration that has already made the judgment that fewer and fewer staffers still meet the statutory requirements. And I don't want to give any administration that discretion, especially if they've demonstrated that they see this differently than we do. We don't want layoffs at the National Weather Service, and I'm quite confident that with the language and the managers, they would continue.
Madam Chair.
Senator Moran.
I'd also would add that the bill increases the funding for the National Weather Service by $10 million to accomplish the outcome that we set about to accomplish.
Senator Baldwin. Or
I have
different?
a separate amendment.
Okay. Senator Murray?
Yeah, I just want to really support Senator Schatz for this amendment. I think we all appreciate just how critical the work of the National Weather Service is, of course, to prepare and respond to extreme weather and natural disasters. We have seen over this last week how absolutely critical that work is. But more to the point, our entire economy hinges on the accurate forecasting of the National Weather Service. Whether it is how our cargo moves, it's what decisions our farmers make, and so much more. So I really believe this is not a time to cut staff drastically without any rhyme or reason. This amendment would just simply ensure that staffing levels at the National Weather Service are at least maintained at the same level as they were in 2024. If this administration wants to present a plan to Congress about reductions that should be made, we can consider a well-reasoned reorganization. But I hope we can all agree that that's not what we've seen so far. And for now, I think us protecting the staffing levels of this critical agency is urgent. So I urge a yes vote.
Senator Mullen.
I just want to look at the history of the approximate staffing levels of National Weather Service, just so we understand what we're talking about. In 21, there was approximately 4,300 employees. 22, there was 4,000. 23, there was 3,500. And 24 to 25, it bloomed to 4,900 employees. So question to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, did anybody complain when it dropped to 3,500? Did we think that it was too low? Did we have hearings? Was you guys out on the news talking about it? I don't remember anybody talking about it, not publicly. When we were at 4,000, 4,300 and 21 dropped to 4,000 and 22, was anybody concerned about it then?
Yes.
Because I sure didn't see you guys talking about it on the news. If you did, it was private meeting. All I'm saying is that you're requiring them to be at 4,900 employees, approximately 4,900 employees, and they did their job in 21, 22, and 23 with much less. I yield back.
Senator Mullen, I just want to add one comment to this debate and reinforce what Senator Moran said, and that is there is an increase of $10 million to provide for 24/7 weather updates and coverage, which we clearly need, and that there is also language in the manager's package calling for the National Weather Service to be fully staffed. I think the problem here is the arbitrary number, especially in light of what Senator Mullen has pointed out, that it's gone up and down. I don't think there's a single person on this committee that does not want the National Weather Service to be fully staffed. We've seen an increasing number of natural disasters in this country, and I think that this bill has been carefully drafted to add additional funding and to include very specific language on the staffing, as opposed to just taking a particular number and assuming that's the right number. Any other comments? Senator Murkowski.
Madam Chair, I just want to underscore the comments that you have just made. We all want to make sure that we've got these positions filled to focus on really the life safety aspects. I am a little bit troubled about the locking into a specific number and saying that's it, and that's where the agency will maintain its staffing. In fairness, maybe I'd like to see a lot more meteorologists and maybe fewer people that were, I don't know what the others may be, but we want to make sure that the focus is really there to maintain the mission. And I think that the language that Senator Moran has incorporated requiring the Weather Service, it shall maintain the staffing levels that are required to execute under the statute to protect life and property. And so it does give a little more discretion as to where it's going to reinforce the staffing levels. But I think it's good. I think it sends the message that is needed to be sent about the prioritization within the agency itself. So I appreciate where Senator Schatz is trying to direct us, but I'm not going to be supporting his amendment, as I think what Senator Moran has incorporated will provide for that necessary level of attention to what we would all like to have reinforced.
Senator Schatz, final comment.
And then would you like me to make the motion after that?
Then would I like what?
Then do you need a motion from me after I complete?
Sure.
Okay. Just a couple of points to Senator Mullins. It's not, it was not 4,900, it was 4,300. We lost 550 National Weather Service employees since January. It's 3,600 as of June. That number keeps going down. So I agree it's a blunt instrument to lock in some number from last year, but let's not pretend we don't know the direction here, and let's not pretend we don't know how this administration will use its discretion under this current statute, which will say, whatever it is that you need to fulfill your statutory mandate, that is the number. That really does delegate that choice to them. So we have a binary choice between locking in last year's number or letting them continue to slash this agency. And so I move for the adoption of my amendment.
The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoven.
No by proxy.
Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito.
No by proxy.
Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
No by proxy.
Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds.
No by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes, 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Are there other amendments to this bill? Senator Baldwin.
I am offering an amendment to restore the over 1,500 grants that have been terminated by this administration at the National Science Foundation, except in cases of cancellation due to financial mismanagement. Now more than ever, it is critically important that the United States maintains our leadership in science and innovation. Canceling research grants does not serve to better our global competitiveness. In Wisconsin, nearly $18 million in grants previously awarded by the National Science Foundation have been canceled. These were research projects focused on increasing women's participation in STEM fields, middle school engagement in mathematics, and researching bioethical impacts in genomics. The National Science Foundation under this administration has canceled $3 million in awarded funding for universities in Alaska, nearly $9 million in Arkansas, over $30 million in Alabama, over $35 million in Michigan, and over $52 million in Georgia. Every member of this committee has had research grants terminated for universities in their states. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, preserving the authority and power of this committee to set the funding levels for the National Science Foundation with the expectation that those dollars will be spent as appropriated.
Senator Moran.
I certainly appreciate the effort by Senator Baldwin to make certain that the National Science Foundation is doing its mission, fulfilling its mission. I share the desire to see NSF have a bright future. I would be concerned that this amendment is overly broad with its one sole exception to reinstatement requirements. It would therefore appear to require the reinstatement of grants that were terminated due to research fraud, malfeasance, lack of scientific merit, other reasons than just financial mismanagement, and I will oppose the amendment.
We will now call for the vote. I'm sorry. Is there any further debate? The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell. No. Senator Murkowski. Senator Graham. Senator Moran.
No.
Senator Hoven. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
I apologize. I was distracted, and I want to have Senator Murkowski recorded as a no via proxy and Senator Graham as a no by proxy. And where did you leave off?
Senator Hoven.
No by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
No by proxy.
Senator Capito.
No by proxy.
Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
No by proxy.
Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher.
No by proxy.
Senator Rounds.
No by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays, and the amendment is not agreed to. There is a vote on the floor. We are going to do a last amendment, and then I hope we could recess to go vote and then come back and conclude our work. Senator Murray.
Thank you, Chair, and I just encourage everybody to come back as soon as the second vote is recorded on the floor. So we have several amendments here and 2 more bills to go. But before we do that, Chair Collins, I just want to talk about one really important issue for all of us in this committee. In order to do our jobs here on this committee, we rely on information from the executive branch so all of us can understand how they are spending the taxpayer dollars we appropriated. This administration has, more than any other in my time in office, refused to share basic information with this committee, often in defiance of our bipartisan spending laws. You all know this. In virtually every budget hearing we've had, we have talked about missing or utterly inadequate spend plans, failures to answer basic questions, and missing notifications to consultation of this committee. And of course, this administration violated our bipartisan requirement to make apportionment data which shows how they are spending taxpayer dollars available to the public. We also need to make sure each agency is communicating with us and clarify our expectations about the information that they're expected to provide. The Chair, I understand you have a commitment to work with us and continue to make progress on this issue. as we continue on the appropriations process. I will not offer an amendment at this time, and I know we intend to work together on that.
Senator Murray, I do commit publicly, as I have privately, to working with you on this issue, and in the hopes of reaching a decision. I do believe our access to information on apportionments, on spend plans is critical. I would say in response to Senator Merkley's earlier comments that it's not as if this committee has not taken steps. We have put the tables, for example, into the bill for the very first time. That is a major step forward. And the reason that our bills were not brought to the floor, despite the very hard work of Senator Murray when she was chair, was the decision of the then majority leader. By contrast, we have a commitment from the new majority leader to bring our bills to the floor, and I hope the committee members will cooperate to make that possible. So it isn't as if things haven't changed.
I compliment the chair for those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take a recess for 15 minutes so that we can go vote. Thank you. The committee will reconvene. There are some promising negotiations that are underway right now on the CJS bill. What I would suggest and what I intend to do is to move on to the ag bill, take up that bill so that the negotiations can continue on the CJS bill, unless the arrival of two of the negotiators means that there has been an agreement.
I think, Madam Chair, that we're ready to go forward. I know there are a couple more amendments to the bill, but in terms of the final disposition, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Okay. I think we're still going to move to the ag bill because there needs to be a little more consultation, I'm told. So I think we can do the ag bill relatively. Yes, Senator Durbin.
Could I ask unanimous consent to change my vote on the CJS bill to yes?
You certainly have that right. Thank you. But why don't we, if I could ask other members to withhold, because your decision may be different if there's an agreement reached among the principals on the Van Hollen amendment, or it may be that it won't be different. I don't know. But I think what we should do is move on to the ag bill, which I believe.
Madam Chair, just for clarification.
Yes.
So you're holding this open. It is not closed. We will come back to it.
We will come back. I'm not saying that we're abandoning CJS. We will come back to it. There just needs to be some more discussions. And since we have two other bills on the agenda, I would like to move to the ag appropriations bill, and that is my intent, but we will come back to the CJS bill. I realize there are also a couple of amendments separate that still need to be offered. So we will set that aside temporarily, and we will now turn to consideration of the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration related agencies bill. I want to thank Senators Hoeven and Shaheen for working together on this bill and their staff as well. This bill is essential to supporting our farmers, ensuring that our food supply is safe, and promoting public health. I now would recognize Vice Chair Murray if she would like to offer a few comments on the bill.
Well, thank you very much. I want to also thank Chair Hoven and Ranking Member Shaheen for putting together a very good bill that rejects reckless proposals to slash and eliminate programs that support rural communities and families and instead keeps our families fed and our farms flourishing. This bill fully funds WIC at projected participation levels with no benefits cuts and provides targeted increases for ag research, rural housing, and food safety, and rejects damaging calls to eliminate international food aid programs, voluntary conservation support for farmers and ranchers, and food boxes that feed hundreds of thousands of seniors. It invests in America, from helping farmers grow to helping our economy grow and to helping our kids and our families grow. I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Hoven, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also thanks to the ranking member. Appreciate it. Also, I want to begin by thanking the ranking member on the subcommittee, Senator Shaheen. She and I worked together actually on a number of the subcommittees, and I really appreciate the spirit with which she's always approached these issues. And I think it's so important. I think the very spirit that she uses reflects our need to work together across the board if we want to be able to get these appropriate bills to the floor, get them passed, and actually have regular order. And so, again, I just want to thank you, Ranking Member Shaheen, and your staff, which worked very hard on this bill, along with my crew led by Morgan Ulmer. They may be a little sleep deprived, but they worked really hard, and they did, I think, a very good job and are greatly appreciated. Overall, the funding is exactly the same as last year. This committee unanimously approved last year $21.7 billion, and that is exactly what we are bringing forward this year. Now, that's about 1% above enacted. In the CR, it was a little bit less. But we're right there. Like I say, about 1% difference. And this is the exact same number you all approved unanimously last year in this committee. Biggest increase is WIC. That's up almost 7%, about $500 million, which is a lot, is a big increase in our budget. And so we had to find savings in other areas because of that. And I understand that WIC has a lot of support on both sides of the aisle, but we have to be mindful of how much it has increased each year and then how that creates stress on other areas of the budget. But we did fully fund WIC and found other areas to reduce to offset that. Also, we fully fund both NIFA and ARS. Ag research is vital. It has strong support on both sides of the aisle. I grew up in western North Dakota, and at that time we could grow wheat and barley and oats, and we were scratching it out, and that was about it. And now in my state, we grow about 40 different major commodities because of the research that's been done, the better seed varieties and the pesticides and all the things that go into being able to grow America's food supply. So for me, it's amazing. And I've seen it up close throughout my whole life, the impact that ag research has on behalf of our farmers and ranchers and our food supply, of course, which benefits every single American. We also fully fund APHIS to make sure that we're managing disease and pests. Two that have been top of mind and very much in the news lately is the avian influenza and the New World screwworm. Obviously, we need to make sure that those things are addressed, and we do. We also protect our food supply by fully funding FSIS, the Food Safety Inspection Service, and FDA. So when it comes to food and drugs, we can't take any chances, and we don't. As I said, because of those things, we had to find other areas where we made some reductions. We tried to do that well and fairly and in a bipartisan way to keep our budget within the 302B, which we were given, which I say is exactly the same number as last year, approved by this committee. Last thing I'll say is this. We have a family-based system, or a system that is made up of family farms and ranches across this country. It's one of the industries in our country that hasn't been taken over by a few big companies. And when we pass good farm policy, we make sure we're going to continue to have a network of family-based farms and ranches, small businesses, rather than just a few controlling everything. And so when we're dealing with these kind of bills, that's how important it is. Every American benefits every single day from the highest quality, lowest cost food supply from that system of farms and ranches across this country. And so when you support this bill, that's exactly what you're supporting. And so with that, again, I'd like to thank Senator Shaheen, and that concludes my comments.
Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Collins. And Senator Hoeven, thank you for being such a great partner. I think Senator Hoeven and I have tried to model our work on the Ag Committee on the good work that Chair Collins and Vice Chair Murray do at the total committee level to find compromise and work together. And I think we've done that in this bill. This continues, as Senator Hoeven said, the bipartisan promise to fully fund the WIC program, supporting the projected increased participation in WIC, and maintaining the full fruit and vegetable benefit, which I think is really important. It also provides critical support for rural communities who are experiencing an affordable housing crisis. This is a huge issue in New Hampshire, as it is, I know, in so many other parts of the country. The bill fully funds rental assistance so that participating families can remain housed, and it provides funding, financing funding that's available for very low-income home buyers, many of whom are first-time homeowners. It also preserves voluntary conservation tools that are used by farmers in New Hampshire. Farming in New England is obviously very different than farming in North Dakota, but it's all critical, as Senator Hoeven said, to maintaining the food supply that's so important in this country. The bill continues our commitment to international food aid programs and programs that help farmers reach new markets and feed the hungry across the globe. It also provides vital funding for the Food and Drug Administration to stay ahead of the curve on approving medical products and regulating our food supply while protecting the public health of the American people. Now, as a number of people have said, if each of us were going to write an appropriations bill, I'm sure we would all do it differently than the bill that's before us, but this is a compromise. It's one that I think has tried to address the biggest concerns on both sides of the aisle and what we've heard from our colleagues, and I think it is a bill that is important. And also, I hope one of the things that this bill does is it considers potential rescissions and discretionary spending on a bipartisan basis. I hope that as people are considering a rescission package in the next few weeks, that they will keep in mind that under our normal appropriations process, we do rescissions. So there's no need to do a separate rescission package because we incorporate that into what we do every time we do appropriations. So to close, I'd like to again thank Chair Hoeven. He and I have worked together since we were governors together, so it's been, we won't say how long, John? You weren't supposed to tell.
2000. Yeah, it's kind of impressive. You were very, very young then, too.
Yes, both of us.
But that's
no
20,
gray hair.
That is 25 years.
Yes, that's right. And as he said, have also worked together on a number of other appropriation subcommittees. So I also want to thank his staff, Morgan Ulmer, Lindsay Morris, and Macy Kelly, as well as mine, Hart Clements, Rachel Erlbacher, and Claire Wingrad. As Chairman Hoeven said, they did yeoman's work in very little time with very little sleep, and we really appreciate that strong bipartisan effort. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I will now turn to Chair Hoeven for a manager's package.
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer a manager's package containing amendments for the Ag bill. This package has been negotiated and agreed to by both sides, and I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Is there any objection? If not, the manager's package is agreed to.
Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to offer an amendment to this bill or speak on this bill? Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the work on the manager's amendment. and it's been a privilege to work with Senator McConnell on hemp. We first brought to this committee the idea that research should be done on hemp, and then later we put in an amendment that proceeded to allow seeds to be transferred across states, and now there is a hemp industry. So Senator McConnell has proposed and is in the bill a new definition of hemp, and I appreciate that the implementation has been agreed to be delayed by a year. Thank you. My concern about the amendment or the definition as written is that it addresses one very important issue but causes another problem. The important issue it addresses is not allowing hemp to be grown to produce hallucinogenic products. That, unfortunately, due to the magic of laboratories, has occurred. But then there are other products that come from hemp, such as CBD, that has, in fact, been a significant factor as a healthcare supplement in many, many products across America that does not have a hallucinogenic effect. So I would like to continue to work with Senator McConnell to see if we can develop in this course of this year a definition that addresses the hallucinogenic factors but does not eliminate the CBD product that is non-hallucinogenic that is valued by many Americans across the land. Thank you.
Senator McConnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To give you an overview, in the 2018 Farm Bill, federally legalized hemp as an agricultural product. This language had an unintended consequence that has allowed for intoxicating hemp-derived synthetic products to be made and sold across our country. These intoxicating products have flooded the market in the absence of regulatory structure, and often use deceptive and predatory marketing towards children with packaging and logos similar to existing food products, such as Oreos, candy, gummies, and cereals. The way I see it, the language I helped secure takes us back to the original intent of the 2018 Farm Bill and closes this loophole. My 2018 hemp bill sought to create an agricultural hemp industry, not open the door to the sale of unregulated, intoxicating, lab-made, hemp-derived substances with no safety framework. Pleased to work with Senator Merkley to include a one-year implementation timeline to help give our hemp farmers ample time to prepare for their future. The language, including in today's bill, keeps these products out of the hands of children, secures the future for regulated hemp businesses, and keeps our promise to American farmers by clarifying the intention of the 2018 Farm Bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there other members who wish to speak on the bill? Or, I'm sorry, Senator Merkley?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have an amendment if it's appropriate this time.
Yes.
And thank you, Senator McConnell, for striving to make sure our children are not exposed to hallucinogenic or it's a bypass of really the cannabis laws elsewhere. So I know that's important work to be done on the hemp. But this 1 year will enable our farmers who are growing hemp currently to produce this year's crop within the existing framework, and we'll have a conversation over the coming year. My amendment number 2, the Agricultural Research Service Amendment, I have 5 ARS stations in my state, and they go to very specific products that are grown in Oregon. We have a wheat farming research station, we have a berry and fruit station, we have a grazing grass and how to recover from grazing lands from wildfires, we have a shellfish station, and I'm missing one. Oh yeah, forest health research. Forests are being a very important product in our state, timber. And what my amendment asks to do is to take and make sure that the funds that we have in the report are, in fact, embedded in legislation, so they'll be spent as intended. I just want to make sure that ARS stations, so important to ag across the country, never become subject to any sort of political pressures or threats. Our farmers depend with so many invasive species, so many both plants and other organisms that are continuously disrupting our best laid plans for agriculture. We need to do this continuous research, and so this just makes sure that what we're laying out in this particular bill is honored. Thank you.
Senator Hoven.
So essentially what Senator Merkley's amendment would do, it would say that ARS cannot make any adjustment whatsoever to any of the accounts, and that they have to spend it exactly the way they did last year, whether that makes sense or not. And so we have tried to accommodate him by essentially including report language in there that provides that direction, but to say that they have to spend every single penny of 1.8 billion and they can't make any adjustment on any common sense basis goes beyond what we feel we can do. And remember, we funded ARS with a 2% increase. So all these accounts are funded, right? But to say they're going to have no discretion whatsoever, we don't think works. So what we have agreed to do is we say in section 773, none of the funds made available to the Department of Ag in this or any other act may be used to close or consolidate resources or locations of any existing ag research service laboratories and facilities without prior notification and approval of the Committee on Appropriations of both houses of Congress. So again, we've tried to accommodate this in what I would say is a common sense way, and that's why I do oppose, though I'm trying to accommodate and make sure that Senator Merkley's concern is addressed, I just don't feel that we can take away all discretion at the level that his amendment would, and that's why I do oppose the amendment.
Would my colleague feel it
Senator
would-
Merkley.
Oh, thank you very much. Would my colleague consider it a solution if we were to take your report language, which does provide flexibility, and put it actually into legislative language? Because what we have learned is report language has no force of law, but you do have flexibility in your report language. And if we could the intent was to essentially give that a little more like, yes, we want the executive branch to remember that what we're laying out should be seriously considered. And I appreciate the flexibility you put in there.
Yeah, I think that might work, as long as they have some if they come back to us for approval and it makes sense and we give them approval, something like that could work.
Can I make a on-the-wing motion to instead take the language that's in the report language that Senator Hoven has put in and put it into the legislative text?
The senator has the right to modify his amendment, and as I understand it, there already is language to prohibit the use of funds to close or consolidate resources or locations for ARS without House and Senate notice and approval.
Yeah, that's in there already.
Yes, and that's in the report language, right? So we'd be moving that into the legislative language? That's what I'm suggesting, so that language
The provision, well, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. I think the provision that you actually cited is already bill language. We are not in a position to take your language and make it bill language, because then, as I say, they couldn't move a single penny, whether it made sense or not.
Right. But I think the issue we need to clarify, since I think you agree on the outcome, is on not having funds be used to close an ARS office without House or Senate notice and approval. I think the issue is it in the report or is it in the bill?
Well,
and Mr. Chairman?
His amendment isn't about...
No, he's offering to modify his amendment to track your language but put it in the bill rather than the report, so that it's more binding.
What we're saying is we're going to keep that in the report, but you have that language.
Yeah, I think we're confusing the issue. My understanding of Senator Merkley's amendment is he wants to say for the funding allocated to different ARS stations, it can't be changed, period. The language we have in the bill says, relates to something actually Senator Durbin and I talked about earlier, and that is that you can't close any ARS facilities without prior approval of this committee and the House Appropriations Committee. Those are two different issues.
But the
Mr. Chairman?
senator's offering to modify his amendment, as I understand it.
Yes, there is confusion about whether the language you cited is in the report or in the legislative text. I like your language. It's so good, in fact, that I'm suggesting we put that language into the legislative text.
Again, no. Now you're talking about a different issue. One's closing offices, one's making sure they can't change how they spend. So now you're offering a different amendment.
I was so persuaded by your lucid explanation of what we think is in report, but would like to have in legislative text. There is still some confusion about whether that language is where it's located, apparently. But if it's already in legislative text, then I applaud you. If it's not, I suggest moving that part into legislative text.
No, I think that got confused in my write-up when we started talking about, so now you want to go from the funding, now you want to shift horses, and now you want to talk about changing language regarding closure of offices. Is that right?
Again, I'm applauding your language, recognizing that that sounded a lot like what I wanted to accomplish, but I wanted to have the force of law that Congress be consulted before offices be closed. I'm admiring your work and suggesting we give it a little more punch.
Madam Chair, maybe we could ask the staff to work on this for a little bit.
That would be great.
While we finish with the rest of the bill.
Yes.
I think, as I understand what Senator Merkley's asking, he is actually changing what he was proposing in his amendment to what is already in the report language.
Right,
And
which
it's
you and I
just-
have gone back, which you and I have worked on
Right.
at length.
But the issue, the language you're agreeing to, it's just a question of can we put it into bill text as opposed to to report language. So it's that language.
So this is in the bill. That's the bill one. This is the bill one.
Okay, while that is being worked out by the staff in the hopes of achieving an agreement.
Yeah, the reason I'm reluctant to do this is we've negotiated this, at length. And so now Senator Merkley's proposed one amendment, but now he's proposing a different amendment and something that we had negotiated for quite a while. And ended up with it in there as report language, and that was a compromise we had come to. And that's why I'm reticent. And so I'm perfectly willing to let the staff talk here a little bit, see where they come out. And if there's something else we can take up at the interim, let's do that.
And let's give it a try, and we'll see what happens. I know you have worked very hard on this and that there was bipartisan support. May I ask if there are other amendments to this bill? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this bill?
What's in the bill language now?
Well, so if you could resolve this issue quickly, we could move to final passage of this bill.
It's bill's language. Yes. This is the report. That's the report language. But that may solve the problem.
Do you just want to have them all and speak on it?
The only other thing I'd offer is that at some point, if we can get this through the Senate, we're going to have to go to the House. And I'm trying to keep something that maybe actually works and takes us the distance. Again, Senator Sheen and I have spent a lot of time on this, and that's why I'm a little reluctant to change it at this point.
And both of you have done an excellent job. Senator Merkley.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I do appreciate this language, Section 773, that is in statutory language, not in report language, so that's what I was hoping to accomplish. I wanted also the funding levels, but this at least gets the heart of my concern. We had our scientists at several of our research stations fired overnight and basically shut down the research. They were then rehired after the agricultural community and Senator Wyden and I pointed out how important these scientists were. Research stations are just not something to be messed with politically. I think you've attempted to accomplish that with what is here. It doesn't go as far as my amendment did, but I'll accept that this is hopefully intent that will help carry weight, that the stations not be shut down or if you will, have their funding taken away, given that we've laid out in a table in the bill how we hope the funds will be spent. And as you point out, at least some flexibility, but I think I hear a sense, and I've talked to many colleagues who know how important these research stations are. And if we can carry that spirit in conversations with the executive branch, I'll take that.
Well,
thank you.
That's why I said you should have great confidence in your ranking member, because she did a beautiful job of negotiating that for you, and I commend her for it.
I commend you both.
Thank you. Well, we're all commending everything and everyone's happy. Seeing no further amendments, I would suggest that the bill be reported by voice vote. Does anyone object to a voice vote?
It's already been reported.
Oh, the good point. We've already done it at the very beginning. So seeing no further amendments, the bill will be reported as amended. Finally, we will turn to consideration of the legislative branch bill. It's not really finally because we will go back to CJS. I want to thank Senators Mullen and Heinrich, as well as their staffs, for their hard work. And I will curtail the rest of my comments in the interest of time, but know that I very much appreciate your work. I'll now recognize Vice Chair Murray if she would like to comment on this
Yeah,
bill.
just real quickly, I want to thank both Chair Mullen and Ranking Member Heinrich for your tremendous work on this bill. It supports our hardworking congressional staff that all of us rely on. It supports CBO and CRS and GAO, which provide priceless insights to help us write strong legislation and root out waste and fraud in government. And it's important as well because of the incredible work both of you have done on supporting the dedicated personnel who keep us and our visitors at the Capitol safe. It includes an essential increase for Capitol Police and emergency funding to protect lawmakers. I know both of you are committed to working on that, and I just personally want to thank you for that. I appreciate everyone's hard work, and I will be a yes vote.
Senator Mullen, Chairman of the subcommittee, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank the committee leadership for the commitment to moving this appropriation process forward. The American people deserve transparency and accountability in the budget process, and this is a positive step forward. I also want to thank Ranking Member Heinrich, who we have a very good relationship with, for his support in drafting the bipartisan legislation branch appropriations bill. This meets and needs the needs of Congress and our agencies in a fiscal responsible manner. The bill, which provides $7.1 billion in funding to the legislative branch, builds a strategic investment we have made to improve the security of Congress and strengthen our capabilities to work on behalf of the American people. It also provides additional resources for the Senate Sergeant at Arms and the Capitol Police to keep the Capitol complex, the members of Congress, our families, staff, and most importantly, our visitors safe while they're here. We are committed to continue working in a bipartisan manner with the committee and Senate leadership and the authorization on the best path forward to address the evolving security concerns. In closing, I want to thank Senator Heinrich's staff, Richard Braddock and Molly Ackers. Is that I'm saying that right? Yes? Okay, thank you. And my staff, Molly McCartney, and their work putting this together. I know they worked countless hours, put us in touch, talking through several issues. With that, I know we have some questions about security. I don't know if you want me to address that now, or if you would like me to address that now. Just for the members' concerns, there's a lot of issues that came out, especially after what happened in Minnesota with member security. Martin and I have spent multiple conversations together, making sure we address these concerns. We put report language in here to allow us to address those as needs come through. I've been working with Jennifer at Sergeant Arms, working out a test program that we're probably going to roll out hopefully in August, where we will have a really good idea of the cost it will take to properly address security concerns for members, not just here, but also in their home states. Also looking at technology security concerns in the member's house. I mean, because a lot of us are here while our families are at home. We want to make sure they're secure. We have a good path forward on funding for that, but before we just throw money at it, we want to know, what it's actually going to cost so we can properly appropriate it. I am absolutely not opposed to looking at security for everybody here. I think that is probably something we need to do, and I'm fully committed on following through with that process. But I can come back to committee hopefully in 2 months and actually have a very accurate proposal to what we need to fully fund the program. That I'll yield back.
Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chair Collins and Vice Chair Murray. The legislative branch bill is the smallest that this committee produces, but it's also one of the most important because it really helps ensure that we maintain our role as a separate and equal branch of government. And this balance of power has never been more important, I think, than probably right now. To be an effective check and balance to the executive, the Congress, and our support agencies need the resources to carry out our responsibilities. And I especially want to thank Chair Mullen and his clerk, Molly McCarty, for working on this bill with us in such a constructive and productive manner. I also want to thank my team, including Richard Braddock and Elizabeth Hill, for their work to develop this bipartisan bill. Neither side got everything we wanted, but we continue to find common ground on many important matters. To achieve that goal, our bill continues to focus on investments in security, oversight, campus operations, and constituent services. And I want to again thank Chair Mullen for his commitment to work with me on ensuring that we provide the necessary resources for the protection of the Congress. Our bill provides some placeholders, as he mentioned, for several security-related activities that Chair Mullen and I have collectively agreed to further develop and appropriately fund in conference based on additional information that we expect to receive from the Senate Sergeant at Arms and the Capitol Police. And I think that this bill really provides a bipartisan package that supports our most critical needs, and I would urge all of our colleagues to vote for it. Madam Chair, that is the bulk of my comments. There is going to be a manager's amendment, and I will urge support of that as well, just for to be brief.
Thank you, Vice Chair Heinrich. I will now turn back to Chairman Mullen for the manager's package.
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer a manager's package containing amendments for the legislative branch bill. This package had been negotiated and agreed to by both sides, and I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Is there any objection? If not, the manager's package is adopted. Senator Murray.
Thank you. As everyone here knows better than anyone, the Library of Congress, the Government Accountability Office, and the Government Publishing Office play really critical roles in helping us do exactly the sort of work we are here today to do. They help us in drafting legislation, getting expert opinion and research to inform the process, and even printing the bills and reports before us. They are no doubt legislative branch agencies, but right now the appointing process for the heads of these agencies involves the executive branch. That does not make a lot of sense no matter who the president is, and I do believe it's time we modernize these processes and make sure that agency heads are appointed by the legislative branch. This is actually a step we took a few years back to ensure the selection process for the architect of the Capitol and make sure it's in Congress's hands, and it makes all the sense in the world to now update these statutes for these legislative branch agencies as well. Now, I do understand that Senate leadership and the authorizing committees of jurisdiction are trying to address this matter. I feel strongly, as appropriators, we should not be silent on this important separation of powers issue. But Madam Chair, I know you share the importance of the separation of powers and the impact on these three agencies. So at this time, I will not offer my amendment, but want a commitment that we will continue to work to get this done.
Absolutely. Important issue. Are there, Senator Brett?
Just want to make sure that the chair and ranking member have the funds they need to fix the train from Hart
Yes.
to the.
We were
I second
just
that.
discussing that as
And
we
the
were
elevators?
stuck on the
Elevators,
train.
right.
As Martin and I were stuck on the train, we figured out there has to be a way for us to work forward on this, and we will. Not that I don't like spending time with him, just not stuck in a train.
Thank you, then I'll withdraw my amendment.
An excellent one it was. Are there any other members who seek to offer an amendment or speak on this bill? If not, seeing no further amendments, the bill will be reported as amended.
Madam Chair, can I say one thing too? If anybody has concerns on our security, what we're trying to do, please feel free to reach out to me. I just didn't want to say it in a public setting because I believe it is sensitive. So I'll be happy to visit with you on a one-on-one or a group setting and tell you what program we're running and how we plan on moving forward with it.
Okay, moving back to CGS, I think Berkeley had an amendment of that.
We're now going to return to the CJS bill, since I know there are a couple of outstanding amendments. I'm hoping we can get the chair back and the ranking member is back. So if we will, I will get staff to retrieve the chairman. Senator Baldwin.
Filling some time as he approaches the dais. I had an opportunity to have a brief conversation with the chairman following the vote on my amendment to restore some of the NSF grant funds. I listened to the chairman's objection to that amendment as not having sufficient exceptions. We pointed to financial mismanagement as one reason not to renew a grant, but he had a couple of others. I would like to work on an amendment. We were trying to do so during this break. I believe we did not accomplish that in that time frame, but I would ask for the chairman's commitment to do that because we have seen this administration cancel numerous grants in all of our states. And I think those worthy grants should be reinstated as per our power and authority as an appropriations committee to fund and expect that the department will expend those funds as we designed.
Senator Moran.
Senator Baldwin, I regret that we were unable to have further conversations during this break, although I was not absent from conversations. And I pledge to you that we'll work together to see if there's common ground to advance this this language, some form of this language on the Senate floor, should this bill arrive there.
Let's hope it does.
Let's hope it does.
Senator Baldwin, I also want to express my willingness to work with you on this issue. I think it is very important. I think we do need more exceptions. And I think this is something that can be worked out for the floor.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair.
Are there other amendments
Merkley
to be offered? Senator Merkley.
I could also fill some time here, Madam Chair. And I'm offering, but I will withdraw the amendment. I passed it around to try to create a discussion over the process of reduction in force. And in law, we've laid out a very extensive structure under Title V, Section 3501 through 3504, very detailed requirements for how reductions in forces are done. These have been translated into a series of regulations that follow that very detail we provided in law. And, but I think there's nothing that says, well, how do we make sure that if there's a significant change proposed, like a massive reduction in the employees of an agency, how do we make sure that the reduction in force law is followed? And so that was the purpose of this amendment, to say no funds can be used to conduct a RIF unless the provisions have been followed that are laid out in law and in regulation. In my part of the world, related to the Forest Service and the BLM and many other agencies, proceeding to massively reduce the personnel without following those steps results in an extraordinary loss of talent and an incredible disruption in the vision that we've laid out in our bill. And I think this is true for in some ways for all of the appropriation bills, but I'll just use this occasion to say I want to engage all of us in a conversation about how we make sure that our congressional intent in laying out the organization of an agency and how it's to be staffed isn't undermined, and at least at a minimum that the requirements under law and regulation are followed for reductions in force. And with that, I withdraw my amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there further amendments to the CJS bill?
Yes.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very brief because I think this amendment has been reviewed. This is a transparency amendment. It recognizes the important public interest in the Epstein case, an interest that I think all of us share. It directs the Department of Justice to preserve the funds and provide us with a report, and we detail in the amendment what is required. And my understanding is that we've agreed by unanimous consent to move forward.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
My understanding was there was unanimous consent to move forward, and I would accept that approach if that's what you prefer.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this amendment? If not, we will do a voice vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted.
I think we're waiting on Senator Murkowski. We might have.
Are there any other amendments before we return?
Yeah, there will be. Van Hollen and Murkowski are working on an amendment which would modify what the earlier, and it would just say that, Kate, can you describe to the chair what the amendment is?
Yeah, what it would do is it would essentially like cut off that bottom part and then just limit the scope of that amendment to fiscal year.
Of the FBI amendment. No.
Oh, not the Epstein, no, sorry, no.
The FBI amendment.
The FBI building.
Do you have any love?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Baldwin.
Assuming there are no other amendments, I know a number of us would like to change our votes from no to an affirmative vote on CJS. Would now be the time to do that?
You can do that. I think we're about to move to a discussion of a possible compromise on this issue.
We could take a
I will withhold until that
pause and have a
has
conversation.
concluded.
Everybody.
So we can inform you what I know.
Why don't we move to the revote for those of you who wish to change?
Madam Chair, I would like to
vote.
change my vote from a no to a yay.
Senator Baldwin votes aye.
Senator Merkley votes aye.
Madam Chair.
Senator Merkley votes aye.
Shots aye, please, thank you.
Senator Schatz votes aye. Senator Durbin had already changed his vote to aye. You're
Madam
not
Chair.
going to change back to no.
Who else was it?
Senator Haggerty.
I'm going to change my vote to no.
Senator Haggerty votes no.
Senator Collins, or Chair Collins, I'd like to change my vote to no.
Senator Britt votes no.
Senator Mullen votes no.
Senator Mullen
Should we
votes no.
call the roll? Just recall everybody?
No.
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
Jack Reed. Jack Reed.
Senator Reed
Aye.
votes aye.
If we do that, we will lose everybody.
Susan. So, what I am prepared to do is, I think that was change my vote on the amendment.
Don't wait.
Opportunity to introduce this amendment. Basically puts a pause on this $550 million for this fiscal year.
She's going to change her vote.
Well, we determine whether or not this is.
Yeah, you can, these days.
So do you two want to present?
Yeah, I want to make sure the understanding.
Senator Haggerty would have to be part of any conversation.
Yeah, I can't find him.
Oh, he's right there. Yeah, yeah.
Madam Chair.
Senator Haggerty, could you come join this discussion, please? Senator Hoven.
I would change my vote on the CGIS bill to no as well.
Senator Hoven votes no.
Are they going to stay no then if she changes the thing? I mean, we're
So just so that everyone understands what's going on, I believe that Senator Murkowski and Senator Van Hollen and Senator Moran are close to reaching an agreement, and that may affect all your votes again. I don't know whether it will or not. Actually, I think it's more likely to affect votes on our side of the aisle. So
Like, nobody said anything.
So is Chris working with her on this amendment?
yes. Okay. It would be.
There you go. What should have gone to Nebraska, but they moved out.
So in that case, then we're.
I mean, you should have been next up. You
You're
were number
fine
two.
on your.
I would think so. If Chris is.
You weren't two. You may have been three, but you weren't two. She was two. Okay, okay.
Oh, I see. I see. Why did they have to do that on this bill? What?
Which he should know. We should deal with these bills.
Maybe you should go suggest let's deal with it separately. We're going to have.
Anybody got popcorn? Just like.
Madam Chair, I do want to change my vote from no to.
So say it into the mic.
Not a freeze.
You can do mine. Here, Chris. Maybe she's going to do more.
Assuming you'll still support the bill. They have like
5, 6 members who are going to flip to no when they start.
They're trying to figure it out. So there's a deal reached with Murkowski and Holland, but it's been their votes. So let's try to see.
No, you have to do it. You have to do it.
So they're flipping their votes to support Van Hollen.
No, so the Democrats are flipping their no votes to yes, and the Republicans are flipping their yes vote to no on the bill. We're at an impasse.
I'm thoroughly confused. What are we voting on?
Nothing right now, but the final bill.
Oh, you mean these are the final votes?
Yeah, if we have a deal on the FBI amendment that Holland has, that Murkowski agreed to, would you still support the final with the FBI amendment in there? Let me talk to see where Collins is.
Madam Chair, if I would like to change my vote from no to yay.
Senator Van Hollen changes his vote from no to yay. Regrettably, I have to report that it was not possible in this amount of time to reach an agreement. So I am going to make a motion to vitiate the passage of the bill, that with the amendment, the motion to approve the bill, report the bill
A second.
favorably.
Second the
Is
motion.
there a second?
Second the motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
No.
Hold on, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes,
on this?
we should have a roll
We should have
call.
some
There's a
discussion on the roll call.
request for a roll call vote.
Madam Chair, is there a portion for discussion here? Because I'd like to understand what just happened.
Is this motion debatable?
Approve the bill.
No, call the roll.
The motion is not debatable. There was no agreement reached. I thought that we were very close to an agreement, but there was not an agreement.
Well, just for
point
the
it-
record, I think Senator Murkowski and I, she correct me if I'm wrong, reached an agreement. It was not acceptable to everybody
Well,
else.
you have to deal
I
with your
understand.
chairman of your subcommittee.
I understood, but.
Point of clarification, what is exactly the vote that we are taking at this point?
The vote would be to vitiate the approval to report the bill favorably.
So, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification. Because there was a bipartisan amendment adopted, we're going to tank this bill?
There is no agreement. And I think it's better that we withdraw the bill for now than to have this bill go down. So,
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair, this exact same thing happened last year on the Homeland Security bill.
No, we never had a vote on it. It never came to a vote.
Madam Chair, the only way to know is...
I would just remind all of our committee, we never had a vote on that, but regardless.
Well, Matt, I would urge everybody to vote against vitiating what the committee just did on a bipartisan basis.
I would just note that I made very clear at the beginning of this markup that senators could change their votes if they were not happy with amendments that were either adopted or not adopted. So, again, I will, and Senator Shaheen.
Well, Madam Chair, if the goal here is to not move forward on the bill to allow further time to see if an agreement can be reached, is that something that would be acceptable to both Senator Van Hollen and the committee, to see if there is the possibility to reach some sort of an agreement, since it sounds like they were quite close?
That's what I'm trying to do by withdrawing the approval of the bill in the hopes that further negotiations will take place. You've drafted an excellent bill. It's hung up on this issue, and I hope that further discussion will reach an agreement.
Senator Collins.
So, Madam Chair, can I just
Yes.
follow up? Can we not just recess? And then we don't have to vote again on the bill, but we can recess and
Well, the problem is that we already have adopted the bill. Then we had a number of changes on both sides. And so
We can recess and continue debate at the next markup.
That's what I think you should do.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Let me first get Senator Moran, and then I'm going to propose, as Senator Shaheen suggested, unless Senator Moran disagrees, that we recess
Subject to the call of
and
the chair.
take this up at the next markup.
Madam Chair, before we recess, I would like to be recorded as a no. Thank you.
Senator Fisher
Madam
will be
Chair,
recorded.
I'd like to be recorded as a no before we recess.
Senator Capito and Senator Bozeman will both be recorded as a no vote. Senator Hyde-Smith.
you guys are
And
ridiculous.
Senator Moran, you wanted to say,
Chairman.
Senator Hoven?
Yeah, you've got me recorded as a no vote.
We will change your vote to no. Senator Moran.
Senator Collins, I asked that my vote be changed from yes to no.
It will be changed.
And then Senator Collins, I don't necessarily care about what process takes place next, to recess, to give us time to sort this out. My overriding goal has been to work with Senator Van Hollen to draft a bill, to work with all of you, to draft a bill that can pass not only this committee, but pass the United States Senate. And while we have worked to try to find an agreement that would take us in that direction, we are not there. I don't know that we're even close to being there. And a bill that would pass this committee without broad bipartisan support isn't a bill I want to take to the Senate floor. I want to get it in a position in which we still have the likelihood that our product would be approved by the United States Senate. We're not there. We're not close to it being there. And a recess doesn't mean that we're going to solve this and come back in an hour.
And for that reason, I too am going to change my vote to no. And Senator McConnell will change his vote to no. I think this is very unfortunate. I am pleased that we got 2 bills passed today with very strong bipartisan votes. And I hope with further work on this contentious issue, which I think is sad that one issue is sinking a bill that was completely bipartisan and strongly supported on both sides of the aisle.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Kennedy wishes to change his vote to no.
Madam Chairman.
He needs to be here. Senator Claus, he needs to be here.
Still like to be recorded as a no.
And they're not here.
They're coming back.
They're coming back.
That's funny for him.
Senator Murkowski.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to ask that my vote be recorded as no. I think we all want this bill to proceed. I think we all want the good that is included in this bill. We are hung up over one issue. As best I can tell, we are hung up over one issue. I think we have it within ourselves to resolve this. I think it's important for us as the Appropriations Committee to figure out a way forward. I raised the concern. I felt it was appropriate that we have a pause on this issue regarding the FBI building for a host of different reasons. The pause was not accepted, and so we're in a place where we're trying to scramble right now, and we haven't been able to scramble fast enough, and it has caused people who, in good faith, chose to vote in the affirmative at the beginning and now in the negative and switch back both ways. So there is now total confusion. And Madam Chairman, if there's one thing that you do well as a committee chairwoman, it is to run a committee with efficiency and direction. And it is unfortunate that we are at this place, but I do believe that given time and good faith working towards resolving this, we can advance the CJS bill in a way that respects the work that Chairman Moran and the ranking member have done and respects the work of your leadership and that of the ranking member. And so I would hope that this just begins a more earnest conversation that involves not only us as appropriators, but the administration as well in answering some of the questions that I think we were trying to get addressed today.
Madam Chair, just a parliamentary inquiry and a comment. First of all,
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we do all want to pass a CJS bill. I think this provision that we've been debating is important, not just for this particular case, but for the larger precedent, but we can postpone that debate. My parliamentary inquiry is, if we recess now, I want to make sure I understand the status of the bill. Is the bill sort of on freeze where we left off, or have we now defeated the bill and we would have to start from scratch?
You're just recessing.
We are just taking a recess, subject to the call of the chair. It's going to be a long recess. It is not going to be a 15-minute recess, but it is a recess subject to the call of the chair. I am waiting for Senator Kennedy to come back and change, because he wishes to change his vote.
But I understand the recess may be long. Hopefully it won't be, but because I thought we had found a way forward, but we didn't. But would we take up the bill in the status where we left off? That's my
That is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yes. We would not repeat what we have already done.
Thank you.
Okay. You're free to go.
Gavel.
Well, now what? Right.
It's not final, though, because we're just, he's almost
Yeah.
done. Is this-
Senator Kennedy is almost here. Since this is a recess and not a final adjournment, I don't think members need to stay.
Send around some teary.
Right, good point. Look, is Senator Kennedy coming or not? 'Cause otherwise, I should just gavel out.
Where's Nathan? Is he close? Is he close? Less than a minute? What? Waiting for the Dirksen.
I understand.
He's waiting for the elevator in Dirksen.
Thank you. Thanks.
You could also just say that Senators Kennedy and Rounds would like to be recorded.
I can't, but Senator Murray suggested.
Okay. She seems to be hung up on that these people just follow Trump and she.
Nice job.
Well, we got your bill through.
We got two through in good
Two
order. That's
through.
progress, and
Were they unanimous?
good job working this out. Hopefully
That
we'll
was
get there.
unanimous. Kennedy voted against the ledge branch.
I know, I know more to do, but we made some progress.
We did. Got two bills through.
Saying that they just do what Trump says and she's not going to do that. That was her line.
You're missing the whole
I know,
point.
I know.
Don't do that to your chair.
His friend.
She's still upset. I don't know how we get better insight into what's happening and what's going to happen. But we gotta figure out a way to, and truly, I don't know how it did.
I mean, the fact that she didn't come to the meeting.
Thanks.
this floor right now. Okay.
I've got a question. Are they coming
Yeah,
or are
Kennedy's
they
staff is
not?
right.
Is Rounds, are they coming or are they?
Where did Brown's staff go?
Brown staffers over there.
Where?
Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy changes his vote to no. We believe Senator Rounds is also on his way. You left and look what happened. We did report 2 bills, one unanimously and one with only 1 dissenting vote. So that's progress. I know. I thought of the irony of that as I said it. All right, can we ask Senator Rounds where he is? Please. Yeah, well, that's what I want to make sure.
Okay. Yes. That's correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Got it. Yes, sir. I will let them know right now. I said I'm standing with the chairwoman and staff director right now, so I will let them know. Okay, yes. Says 2 minutes.
Okay. Were there?
He's getting into
I
the
can't remember
barricades now.
whether I voted twice or I must have. I would have told me. Yeah, is this a phone? So is he coming?
Yeah, he's just going through the barricades of the Senate right now, so. He went to lunch at Bistro Cacao.
You know that's not allowed by appropriation. I was just gonna say, how dare you?
No, because that's only some stuff. Yeah, you're good.
You have too many people who have your email and phone number the way I do. It's driving me crazy. Thank you. I think that was sweet. This clearly Senator Rouse.
Madam Chair, I would move to change my vote from aye to nay.